In the stillness of the night over the Middle Eastern seas, a silent storm of steel and fire was unleashed. There was no warning, only the roar of jet engines from the aircraft carrier's deck and flashes of light cutting through the darkness. It was the night when technology, strategy, and speed converged, delivering one of the boldest strikes by the U.S. Navy in 2025 and making the Challenger pay a heavy price. Super Hornets from Carrier Air Wing 7 roared off the flight deck in the early dawn hours. Their mission seemed straightforward: deliver 16,000 pounds of precision-guided munitions to destroy a heavily fortified underground facility belonging to the Houthi militants, a command center buried deep within the hills near Sana'a, Yemen. It was believed to be the nerve center coordinating recent attacks. Thermal satellite imagery had detected unusual heat signatures approximately 30 feet below the surface. As the F-18 fighters closed in, the seemingly impenetrable fortress was about to face the wrath delivered at twice the speed of sound. At the same time, two EA-18G Growlers took off on a covert mission, not to drop bombs, but to blind the Houthi air defense network. These electronic warfare aircraft established an invisible stealth corridor along the Yemeni coast. With next-generation jamming systems, it took only seconds after activation for Houthi radar screens to flood with electronic snow. Radar stations around Sana'a descended into chaos, overwhelmed by ghost targets. One desperate technician switched the radar to maximum target acquisition mode, exactly what the Growlers had anticipated. The key to victory lay in the AN/ALQ-249 pod mounted beneath the Growler's wing. This is a jamming system operating across the 2 to 18 GHz frequency range, overlapping with 93% of the Houthi air defense radars. Each pod emits up to 8 megawatts of power, enough to turn enemy radar into scrap metal. Compared to previous generations, it's 10 times more powerful and capable of disabling radar systems from as far as 660 kilometers away. Imagine screaming into a microphone so loud that it blows the speakers. That's essentially what this system does. Within minutes of activation, the Growlers carved out a 40-kilometer-wide electronic corridor, allowing the strike squadron to move as if they were invisible. Meanwhile, the Super Hornet fighters approached from the southeast, flying over the Gulf of Aden before veering towards Sana'a. As they crossed the Yemeni coastline, the pilots climbed to 35,000 feet, well beyond the reach of any remaining air defenses. On their infrared radar, the target appeared as irregular geometric shapes, a clear indication of underground infrastructure. The lead pilot identified 4 primary strike points on the roof of the command center, and the onboard computer quickly calculated the ideal angles of approach. Just minutes later, the command rang out, "All units, release ordnance." Each F-18 was armed with 4 GBU-31J dams, powerful 2,000-pound GPS-guided bombs. These munitions have a margin of error of just 5 meters, even when dropped from high altitude. For this specific mission, technicians had programmed a 15-millisecond delayed fuse, just enough time for the 1-inch thick steel casing to punch through 20 feet of reinforced concrete before detonating, unleashing a 550-pound warhead inside. The impact didn't end with the first wave. The following bombs were dropped at 3-second intervals, striking the same exact point, creating a deep drill effect that burrowed through layer after layer of the structure. Before the dust could even settle, 7 more J-dams obliterated entry points, ventilation systems, the communications hub, and the weapons depot. A massive secondary explosion followed as stored munitions in the bunker detonated. The result, the once fortified complex was now nothing more than a barren crater nearly 200 feet wide, with its underground tunnels buried beneath thousands of tons of rubble. Damage assessment data was relayed directly to the pilots by an E-2D Hawkeye command aircraft. Flying as far as 150 miles away, its AN/APY-9 radar could penetrate dust clouds and electronic interference to deliver real-time battlefield updates. With its massive radar array, it can scan an enormous volume of up to 6 million cubic miles, covering nearly the entire western region of Yemen. The 5-person crew coordinated timing so precisely that all 16 JDAMs struck their targets within just 0.8 seconds of each other, delivering maximum impact. But then, the unexpected happened. Radar aboard the destroyer USS Carney detected multiple high-speed objects launched from Yemen's western coast. 4 Iranian-supplied missiles were heading straight toward the carrier strike group. The Aegis combat system instantly calculated intercept solutions. The ship launched 4 SM-2 missiles, the U.S. Navy's primary air defense weapon. They accelerated to Mach 3.5 in just 8 seconds, over 4,200 km/h, covering more than a mile every 1.4 seconds. As they neared their targets, the SM-2's active radar seekers engaged. With a target lock success rate of 98%, even against small objects like birds, these missiles unleashed a cloud of metal fragments, destroying everything within their lethal radius. The result, all 4 incoming missiles were completely neutralized before they could reach the fleet formation. To prevent the situation from escalating, the U.S. launched a second strike. At 3:30 a.m., 4 F-35C Lightning II jets were deployed from the aircraft carrier. With no Growler support, this was an absolutely covert mission. Thanks to a radar cross-section of just 0.0001 square meters, about the size of a small marble, the F-35 was virtually invisible to enemy radar. The main AN/APG-81 radar operated at just 2% of its normal power, reducing the chance of detection to almost zero. Look closely under the aircraft's fuselage, and you'll spot the electro-optical targeting system, EOTS, mounted just beneath the nose. It was the EOTS that detected the heat signature from the recently fired missile launchers from 73 miles away, despite their camouflage. Combined with the 360-degree integrated helmet display, the pilot could see through the aircraft, like having superhuman vision, pinpointing targets with near-perfect accuracy. Inside the weapons bay was the GBU-53B Stormbreaker, a next-generation smart bomb with a striking range of 40 nautical miles. But its most impressive feature is the TRI Mode Seeker, combining millimeter-wave radar, infrared sensors, and laser guidance. Thanks to this, whether it's nighttime, dusty, or in the midst of a sandstorm, the bomb still hits its mark. Most impressive of all, while the first wave of bombs was still in flight, it detected a moving target and relayed that data to the following bombs, as if the munitions were collaborating in real time. By 4:00 a.m., all aircraft had returned safely without a single loss. Post-strike assessments confirmed that the command center had been wiped out, with an estimated 27 Houthi commanders neutralized. 4 out of 6 remaining launchers were destroyed. Over the next 72 hours, not a single attack was launched against commercial vessels, the longest period of silence since the conflict began. The big question now, will the Houthis back down and come to the table, or adapt once again to keep targeting one of the world's most critical maritime routes? Either way, that night, with just 4 Super Hornets and 2 F-35s, the U.S. sent a message that couldn't be misunderstood: peace is the better option. The GBU-72 Hellspike had arrived. It penetrated nearly 300 feet of limestone and concrete before detonating at the precise structural weak point, pre-calculated by advanced AI systems. There was no fireball, no plume of smoke. Only a suffocating tremor rippling from the heart of the mountain, echoing through the surrounding caves like sound waves crashing against stone. In an instant, everything inside Site-72 Alpha, from the weapons depot and command center to the final breaths of the Hezbollah fighters, was crushed under a monstrous wave of pressure. Dust burst from the cave mouths. Steel doors twisted like foil. Walls collapsed, beams snapped. There was no way out. The entire mountain, once a symbol of strength, confidence, and concealment, now crumbled like a hollowed-out hill. No one inside had time to understand what had just happened. No one had the chance to call for help or fire a final shot. It was over in seconds, a silent, cold, and absolute collapse. And that very silence was the most terrifying proof of American power. No boots on the ground. No massive explosion, just one precisely made decision, and an entire mountain fell to its knees. Before the dust could settle, amid the silent rubble of Site-72 Alpha, 8 figures staggered out from a hidden escape tunnel tucked beneath a scorched grove of cedar trees. They were the rare survivors, Hezbollah fighters, bloodied, weapons slung over their shoulders, dragging satellite equipment behind them, clinging to a fragile belief that somehow they had made it out alive. They thought the attack was over, that the mountain had collapsed due to some structural failure, that they still had a chance if they could just disappear fast enough. But what they didn't know was this. Even as the Hellspike was still burrowing through the rock, infrared satellites had already locked onto every heat signature inside the base. There was no time for negotiation, no spoken commands. 2 GBU-39B bombs dropped from the weapons bay, automatically adjusting course, locking onto their targets through a shared sensor network between the 2 F-35I Adir jets. On the ground, the 8 Hezbollah fighters were moving along the mountainside, believing they had survived the worst. But in modern warfare, there are no second chances. On May 16th of 2025, Colonel David Levin piloted his F-15I Ryam, call sign 1, leading 2 formations as they breached Yemeni airspace at an altitude of 24,000 feet. The fighter jets were operating under strict radio silence, MCON Alpha, meaning no radar emissions and only mission-critical communications were permitted. Intelligence confirmed that these ports were receiving weapons shipments from Iran, intended for attacks on Israel and international shipping. This wasn't just another airstrike mission. It was a mission to protect their loved ones back home. The western coastline of Yemen came into view. Visibility was limited by a thick layer of coastal humidity stretching roughly 15 kilometers. The targeting display showed preloaded coordinates, warehouses 3 and 7 at Hodeida port, where satellite imagery had detected unusual activity over the past 3 days. The temperature readings of these warehouses didn't match their surroundings, a clear sign that something was being concealed. At 1544, Sword 11 descended to the optimal altitude for weapons release. The internal navigation system was counting down to the launch point, just 87 seconds remaining. The formation was flying entirely on internal systems, no GPS, no radar emissions, to avoid jamming and detection. Each aircraft maintained precise spacing, maximizing strike effectiveness while minimizing the chance of being spotted. To penetrate deep without escort, Israel transformed the F-15I into a fully independent war machine. The most distinctive feature, 2 conformal fuel tanks along the fuselage, carrying an additional 4,500 pounds of fuel without increasing radar cross-section. In the cockpit, the Elbit 4 helmet projects all critical data, threats, terrain, target flight path, updated every 40 milliseconds. At that speed, even a blink at the wrong moment could send the pilot into the sea. This isn't just flying, it's riding the razor-thin edge between life and death. The situation was spiraling toward a suffocating climax. On the lead aircraft's HUD, the data flashed cold and final. 2 missiles inbound at Mach 2.5, closing in from just 32 kilometers out. That meant impact in less than 39 seconds. But if they kept climbing, in exactly 38 seconds, the formation would punch through the SA-6's engagement ceiling, beyond the reach of its deadly grip. A life-or-death gamble, where the margin for error was a single second. No one spoke, no jokes, no last words, just the sound of breath quickening behind oxygen masks and white-knuckled grips on throttles. Numbers pulsed red on the display, each flicker like a knock from death itself. And all they could do was hope the sky held no more missiles lurking in the shadows. Finally, at 03:15, the formation broke past the coastline, officially out of Yemeni airspace. But the 2 missiles still chased them like phantoms. Without radar guidance, they began to wobble, confused, searching. Desperate and panicked, Houthi operators fired again, this time at decoy signals generated by the Israeli jamming systems. Just when it felt like the end was inevitable, both SA-6S suddenly veered north and exploded mid-air. Not a single F-15I was hit, but every flight suit was soaked in sweat. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment so I know you stopped by.